Hi there, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us today as we discuss an overview of your CyberGEN.IQ assessment. My name is Lynn Dome. I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WiCyS, W-I-C-Y-S, and we pronounce it WiCyS like we sisters because that's exactly what we are. We are a cyber sisterhood. And our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And we're so proud to be able to partner with so many of our strategic partners. And for today's event, we're going to be discussing Haystacks Solutions as a strategic partner of ours, what they've offered our members through our mentor-mentee program and our internship program was the CyberGEN.IQ assessment. So we have Doug and his team here from Haystacks Solutions, and they're going to be going over an overview of what the assessment results mean to you and what's next. What can you do with these results to leverage yourself in your cybersecurity career so that you could bridge that gap from going from where you're at and continue your pathway, keeping that momentum going strong on the advancement for yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it on over for Doug for him to take it from here.
Thanks a lot, Lynn. Really excited to be here, and it's been a pleasure over the last couple of weeks to collaborate with the women in the mentor-mentee program and in the internship program, and I'm a great collaboration. So excited that we're here and excited to discuss the results. My colleagues are on with me, so Doctors Mike Bunting and James Hall, and they'll talk about their backgrounds in a bit more detail here in just a moment. But I will get our, let's see, we'll bring our slides up, and we'll just some people may have had a background in our organization before they were exposed to it via the WiCyS programs, and some may not. So I'll go through this quickly. But the haystacks view is that the damage wrought by cybersecurity issues is so acute and pervasive that we need everyone who can fight in the fight, regardless of where they come from. And CyberGEN.IQ can help find people regardless of their training, background, et cetera. And that's what we want to do. And the goal is to be able to, again, pinpoint cyber genius quickly, helping hiring managers, talent leaders, students, hacking club leaders, people that are trying to build out the competition teams at their schools, competition teams in their chapters, and and workforce development programs. And that's the fringe where we want to be and help bring new talent into the domain. So we'll go over the background of the assessment, the scoring overview, results review, and then go into the survey feedback review. Got a lot of great feedback from people, and want to, we can go into that a lot. And I did get a bunch of questions beforehand. We'll answer as many of those as I can. And people will also be able to, reach out to me afterwards and ask other questions. So, I look forward to it. But again, my colleagues, James Hall, Mike Bunting, and myself. So James, you could give a quick background on yourself, and then Mike will jump over to your slides.
Yep. So my name is James Hall. My background is in mathematics and data science. I've worked on the CyberGEN.IQ and other aptitude tests for about 2-3 years now. I'm working on the development, the scoring pipeline, and also some of the statistics and analyses done. Given your scores, now how do we start to analyze this?
Awesome. And Mike.
Thanks, Doug, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Mike Bunting. My background is in psychology as an expert in educational assessment and measurement. And for more than 18 years, I've worked in the field of assessment, having developed tests for aptitude for foreign language learning, tests of identifying people's culture and regional expertise, and as we're talking about today, aptitude for cybersecurity. And I'm newly working on some projects in identifying talents for computer languages, data science, and web development. This project came about some years ago with a strong demand signal from the federal government, explicitly the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. And as you might know, the military services, and to some extent the civilian forces as well, come from a grow your own kind of philosophy. So they're taking raw talent and cultivating that talent and growing professionals, rather than going out and hiring a bunch of people that are already experts in their field. And the observation that the services were struggling with were things like the fact that we don't have enough developers. People are coming with heterogeneous backgrounds and don't have prior expertise, so we can't make selection based upon that expertise. And the overwhelming need for more and more people, more talent. In 2015, Vice Admiral Jan Tai, who was head of Navy Cyber Command, 10th Fleet, gave an interview, and she talked about where's our aptitude test for cyber. The military has a very long tradition of assessing aptitude. So assessing the raw talents that people have that help them to be successful in a mission area. And the services at that time hadn't developed an aptitude test that was specific to cyber. And so we responded, my colleagues and I, to that charge, to that demand signal from Vice Admiral Tai and others to step up and create the technology that is behind CyberGEN.IQ. When I think about what does it take to be successful in cyber and how I might identify people with talent, of course I could assess people based upon knowledge. So if I've got a group that has been in the field for a long time, they've been trained, they've been working, I can give them a knowledge-based assessment and see, I can confirm, of course, that their skills match what they say their expertise is. But that doesn't really help us if we need to create opportunities for new groups of people that have not been exposed to this as a career field. They don't have deep knowledge or even rudimentary knowledge on which to assess people. So what we're trying to do is look under the hood and identify the mental abilities and other traits and dispositions that help people to be successful. And I again, have been in this field for some time. And just to share a bit about my philosophy, I'm all about finding pathways to success. I'm not a believer that there's just one size fits all or that there's just one way in which to become an expert. And rather, we need to understand people, understand how they might be successful, and then give them the tools that they need. Identifying success in cyber is challenging. There is no such thing as cybersecurity as a monolithic concept. There are literally hundreds of job titles that are encompassed in this concept of cybersecurity. You know, as well as I do, it's a rapidly evolving field, and cyber is very hard. And people are faced with complex situations, and it's not very easy to proceduralize the things that they do. So these were just some of the factors that we had in mind as we were trying to develop this instrument. And very importantly, we designed CyberGEN.IQ to be fair. I think by assessing aptitude and not skills, we are leveling the playing field. So we aren't drawing from just people that have had a particular experience or exposure and acquired some knowledge. Instead, we're able to open the doors for many people based upon the traits, dispositions, and aptitudes they have and the way in which they might approach a problem, and matching people with a particular background to a particular area of study.
And actually, Mike, if you can, there were some questions that came in. If you go back one slide,
Sure.
some questions about, FAIR, what research has been done to demonstrate the, fairness? How was that looked at, and what are the processes that have been undertaken so far to kind of affirm, affirmatively demonstrate the kind of the non-bias of the assessment?
Sure. What we do is we look for, sorry, I just had it on the tip of my tongue and then went out of my mind.
So the EEOC guidelines, part of what I recall that research had to do with, assessing variances across variances across the different protected classes and then seeing if there were statistically significant variances.
That's right. So the word that was like there and then disappeared was adverse impact. So what we do is we look carefully to see across the groups of people that have taken the test to ensure that there isn't adverse impact based upon things like your background language or your background gender or other things like that. And so what we're able to do through the data analysis is show that while we're measuring individual differences, the individual differences that matter on the test are not there because of geographic or racial or gender or other background characteristics. So we're able to show that the test through the data analysis is fair across groups of people.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did what was the kind of the scientific process or the scientific discipline or the approach that was used kind of to create the assessment? So how, and you've told me this story a couple of times, but maybe kind of walk through it for this audience. How did you guys start? And how was this the set that was arrived at?
Sure. So we have an approach that we've kind of worked out over a number of years. So I am by training again a cognitive psychologist. So somebody who tries to understand the mental processes that are involved in performing a cognitively complex task. And for many years, I've looked at the cognitive characteristics that are involved in learning things like learning a foreign language or learning to become expert in cyber. What we do is, from a laboratory perspective, come up with ways in which to measure mental abilities, memory, attention, executive function, other facets of intellect. We go through a very rigorous process of confirming that the measures are fair and that they're measuring the things that we expect them to be measuring. We do this through a process in which we use multiple measures, different measures of the same ability, so that we can identify the underlying construct and separate out any test performance characteristics. And then what we do is we develop measurements of job performance or learning. And it's all about identifying then the relationship between performance on the test that we've developed and the outcomes that we care about. And what we want to see is that by taking this test, I can assess somebody's abilities, and I've demonstrated a causal relationship between performance on the test and being successful in an outcome that I care about. So that if I care about, does somebody pass a course the first time through it? Does somebody do well in a particular kind of job performance test? Does somebody do well in a job simulation? That's what we're looking for. So what we have is kind of both sides of that equation. We have confidence in the cognitive abilities that we are measuring. We have confidence in the outcomes that we and that our sponsors care about. And then we're able to demonstrate that causal relationship between test and outcome. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you. And I'll remind, and we've got active questions going on, so clearly people are familiar with it. But if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat on the bottom of the screen. But I'll take a couple of that popped up. So if IQ testing is illegal in U.S. job interviews, how can CyberGEN.IQ get away with it? Well, I guess you're asking is what's the legal basis? And IQ testing, I can't. Sorry, is my audio back?
Your audio's back.
Okay. I can't speak to the exact section of law that this questioner is referring to in U.S. job interviews making IQ testing illegal, but we have worked closely with, and I think it's which section of law is it, James, CFR 14, that lays out the 3 ways that testing can be applied to a job. And there are several ways in which this testing, cognitive testing is able to be a part of a selection process, as long as you're affirmatively able to show that there's no direct discrimination or indirect discrimination against the EEOC protected classes. So if if somebody has a more specific question on that, you'll get my email address at the end of this, and you're able to reach out. And there was another question regarding, neurodivergence and dyslexia, ADHD. The testing that, and Mike, I'll say what I understand so far. The testing has, our statistics, I don't think, have been baselined against that, and our the web app needs to take more things into account there. We are an early stage company and have not been able to account for everything yet, but experiences like this provide the data and the feedback that help us account for those. With respect to reading comprehension, the standard, I'm a former soldier, the standard for anything that's deployed in the military is that no text is written to require more than an 8th grade reading level. It is definitely the case that reading the instructions requires, a degree of reading comprehension, but again, the standard in military documentation is that you can't have things that really literally are above an 8th grade reading level. So we're not sure. So I'm not sure that there would be specific adjustments around reading comprehension that need to be made, but areas of neurodiversity are an area where our statistics can be expanded, but also the cognitive assessments that are a part of this have been baselined against, applied across hundreds of thousands of people around the world, and cited in literature more than 10,000 times. So we're not, so there's a strong basis of these being used across neurodiverse groups. So Mike, if there's anything you want to add there, that would love to hear it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that you said. So again, I would not want to use this as let me say this a different way. If somebody needs to ask for accommodation, then by all means, let's have that conversation and provide the accommodation that's reasonable and necessary. I would not want to have somebody feel that they didn't perform the way they would want to perform in the test because they weren't given the necessary conditions in which to do well. So I think that that's a conversation that can be had. And the more exposure we have, the more types of people that take the test, the more we can learn and make improvements that are needed. I agree with what you said about reading comprehension. We were very deliberate in the development here, not wanting to make this deeply about or restrictive to a particular language background. So, for instance, you don't necessarily even have to be an excellent English speaker. Maybe you have a different native language other than English, and you could still perform well in this test. In other words, it's not so contingent upon language that it's going to be a factor that causes you to perform poorly. I don't know exactly the reference about IQ tests being illegal. I know, for example, that a lot of companies use different kinds of testing. If you apply to be a government civilian employee of some government agencies, they go through testing. Google goes through testing. So I, I I think that testing is a part of many hiring processes. And again, what we're trying to do here is not to say that this is the barrier that you have to cross, but rather let's help you learn something about yourself, and then think about how you might approach the curricula as you're developing expertise in this area, and also matching you to any of the myriad number of cybersecurity careers that take very different set of skills to be successful. Are there other questions that we should try to jump on now, Doug?
Yeah, I know we're gonna lose James in a minute, so let's jump in here. So the cognitive abilities, being analyzed by CyberGEN.IQ, everyone who took the assessment is familiar with the assessments on the right, and the way these work is they align with these cognitive dimensions: initiating, responding, real-time, and exhaustive. And that's been a part of Mike's research for years. And when those dimensions go together, they form quadrants that reflect someone's cognitive strength in offense and defense, in design and development, or in analysis and forensics. And again, the assessments on the right have, many of them, again, have been, Mike and his team, they chose those assessments. Some of the assessments have been designed, but some of the assessments in one form or another have been around for decades. And those have been baselined, again, referenced in literature, more than 10,000 times, and been used across millions of people around the world. So that's part of what gets done. And then this is a kind of a management report that comes together that says, how did candidate one perform on the offensive side of the house? How did candidate one perform in defense, in design and analysis, and in analysis or in design? And one of the things that was a piece of feedback that we got and heard, and I'll give everyone an update on this, is that the report that people got didn't give a clear pathway to how, where there were improvements that we could make in how to translate, your score into a particular job area. And so I'll show you that everyone here is going to get a kind of a preview of what the new report that we're going to deploy is, that will make that a lot clearer. But for managers that are using this in a selection process, they get to see how people stack up on the offensive, defensive, and analytical and design. And those domains reflect, cyber warfare, penetration testing, ethical hacking for offense, et cetera. So, and everybody that completed the assessment, we're going to send those out to everybody with the new format that you'll see here shortly. So what we wanted to do here was kind of talk about how some of the results went and some of the analysis. James will jump into some of this. So of the about 800 or so people in the mentor-mentee program, 193 completed the assessment, and we had 231 candidates for the internships complete the assessment. And what we noticed, and this will be clear in the data, that the women of WiCyS scored really, really well, particularly relative to some experienced operators in the community. And so let's just kind of jump into it. And James, if you can, here's one with paper folding. This one has kind of a long tail. Yeah, sorry, James, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So paper folding is one. So in general here, the sort of screenshots will be on the right and kind of be what the task is. Looks like if you've remembered it, but the paper folding is a critical thinking task, and it sort of assesses your ability and your spatial reasoning. And you can see the orangish plot. Orangish figures are these operators that Doug mentioned, and the purple or blue and the gray are sort of the WiCyS folks. And there's certainly people that have scored really, really highly on these tasks. And then there's, like as Doug said, there's a longer tail and a wider distribution. And so this is sort of what we might expect. Like these operators are a very homogeneous population, and they're all sort of picked to do the same tasks and are good at the same things. And you're seeing here that there's actually a wide variety of skills and knowledge and aptitude, not only in paper folding, but as we'll see, like in same as remember and count, this task, which has a very similar sort of look to it, right? The plots. So the WiCyS folk, some people scored incredibly highly, like in the 80th percentile, which is obviously quite rare, and where the SOCOM operators are super well clustered. And so from this, and each task, right, each portion of the test that you take has different features about it, right? So it might be a critical thinking task, it might be a responding task, and so as Doug sort of pointed out, as we start to accumulate more scores across these different tasks, we can build, what we kind of think of as like a cognitive profile, and then relate that to your offensive, your defensive, and all your different aptitudes based on your results. And so spatial reasoning here is sort of completely different from these other tasks. This one is worrying about your spatial reasoning. And memory as well, because there's this memory component where you see an image and then it goes away and then you have to see another image. And so now you have to deal with this working memory and this visual spatial reasoning. You can see really similar, same thing. You have this huge spike on the right-hand side of people that scored extremely highly. And that's really exciting for us. That's, seeing people score really well across the board is, and like you said, some of these tasks, there's like you've gotten this many right and you've gotten this many wrong, right? And there's sort of an indication of how well you performed. But then others are surveys, right? And so there's not necessarily a right or a wrong. Better is not good necessarily. And so, or better is not a higher score necessarily, right? So one of them talks about like your risk aversion. So maybe risk aversion is good for some roles and not good for other roles, right? And so some of these, like I said, so I guess some of the tasks, a higher score is generally meaning you got more correct or you scored more highly. But in other tasks, it's just purely where do you fit along the spectrum, and it's not necessarily good or bad for any. You can see matrix reasoning here. It is very sort of similar distribution here. 80th percentile, some people did really, really well. All these people scored perfect, which is not an easy task. And then, so I think, Doug, you can take it from here.
Yeah, so this was also kind of an interesting look at the data. And what we're seeing here is some of the differences, there was pretty tight clustering, and James, I know you're going to have to drop, but thanks for your help, sir. So this is kind of just laying the data on top of each other for the interns, the group that took this as part of the internship versus the group that took this as part of the mentoring program. And there's a lot of similarity there. And same with this is the real-time dimension. A lot of similarity between the populations. And then again on the development, and that would be this quadrant, for example. The intern candidates and the mentor candidates, performed extremely similarly. So some of the feedback, I'll just address this first because we've gotten several questions about it, and in the survey and during this webinar, what the report format that we provided, we have made some improvements to it, and here's a snapshot of what we're going to do. So the current report format doesn't provide the best translation, and so we workshopped this with a couple of people. Doesn't provide the best translation to, all right, how do my scores rate on in which quadrant? And so we have updated it, and we're going to send this as a PDF to everybody that took the assessment. So, and then by having it more clearly related to a specific quadrant, that'll help answer many of the questions with respect to how this relates to a specific role. So I got a question: how did I divide mentorship program versus intern applications? Many of us were both. There were about 50 people that were both mentors and applied for the mentorship program. And from a statistics point of view, those people essentially, and for this statistics point of view, from the overall baseline statistics point of view, everybody only got counted once. But for the statistics that James put together, people got essentially those 40 or 50 that were both got counted twice, as though they were individual test takers, which you could debate the statistical soundness of that, but that's how we did it in this case. We've spoken a bit about diversity and inclusion. There were observations that the language seemed very male biased. The data, and Mike and I would be of a similar perspective on this. And so if there's another way to come at this, Mike, let me know. But basically, the data are clear that when we've baselined this against the thousands of people who have taken this before, that there is no statistically significant or statistically measurable difference in how men versus women perform. Now that doesn't mean that the job of making it non-biased is done. So we have a process that we're implementing, and that we continue to baseline the statistics and make sure that everybody that there aren't differences. But so far the data don't suggest it. The data are clear that there aren't differences. Now, one of the other pieces of feedback was that the remote associates task, it would, for people where English is not your native language, that test is not, that test could be biased. And in that fact, we agree. And as we've implemented the Spanish, version of the assessment, and if for anyone that is a native Spanish speaker or a Spanish speaker, non-native, and would like to help us do some testing of that version, reach out to me. But the Spanish version does not include the remote associates task. And some of our clients where either where English is an important component or not an important component, that assessment either is or is not included. So it depends on the situation. But one of the challenges we had during the period, we had about and we were implementing a new ticket tracking system. We had about 50 emails to support, and most of them were answered within an hour or two. As our CEO, I accept responsibility that we did not get 100% coverage, and I apologize for that. And I know there were technical issues, and some of those were highlighted in the survey results, but also just in some of the emails that I got. And that's on me, and I apologize for that. And so if there are people that have unresolved questions or unresolved things that they tried to follow up on with their specific result, I won't be able to address it based on questions in this chat, because I'll need to have an email address to really be able to resolve it. But please follow up with me, and I will take care of it. The instructions were unclear, so that's what I guess I would do. Is Lynn, I have a couple of ideas for some other feedback sessions that I'm gonna propose, and optionally to anyone that's interested, because this appears to be a topic that a handful of people are very, very passionate about. I would I'm going to maybe set up a couple of discussions where I'll set up like office hours. Anybody can jump in, ask me a very specific question. It won't be anonymized like we're doing through this webinar, but it'll allow me to get very specific feedback. If there was to be able to work with instructions unclear, I would need to have a snippet of the text that someone thinks is unclear, and then we can workshop how to make it more clear. So I guess, that's a long way of saying I embrace the feedback and want to make sure that I clarify things and make sure that things are as clear as possible. In certain cases, there are testing reasons that certain things are not explained. And so that's, certain things can't be said in advance without perturbing the outcomes. Some of, so I, gotten some questions that, some people have said they did not receive an email for feedback. I can't entirely account for that. If somebody, again, in this particular platform, I'm not going to be able to trace back who has said they didn't. Every email address that was associated with either the internship program or the mentoring program was in a 2-line from me. So we can trace that one back if there are specific email addresses that think that they think they got missed. The intent was to get everybody. I aggregated that list myself. So please follow up with me. My email address is going to be in the presentation. So then there are, feedback around, too long or too hard. One of the things that we'd, put out at the beginning was, that the test can be broken up into smaller sections. You could sit and do it all at once, or you could break it up, and about half the people who completed it did it in one sitting. Half the people that did it in multiple sessions. So you're able to break it up into individual tasks and come back at it, and that's why we gave people a couple of weeks. The too hard thing is interesting, because really one of the goals of an assessment is that it does make your brain hurt to really figure out if everybody got 99th percentile on the assessment, then frankly the assessment wouldn't be very useful. And I was as I said, I was in the military, and one of the assessments there that was the Defense Language Aptitude Battery. It's a 3-hour test that you do have to take in one sitting, and at the end of it, your brain feels like mush. But what the real goal there is, if the government's going to spend $250,000 on a linguist, they need to make sure that this brain can handle that investment. And so yeah, it's hard. And everybody who took it is really, really smart. So I'm glad that we were able to frankly, the fact that people are saying it's too hard means it means you activated your brains and your brains really got into the assessment, and that's a fantastic outcome. This was not easy. So, and then there were technical issues, browser issues that many people we were able to interact with, and their scores were recorded. But it also did highlight some technical challenges that we needed to improve. So, as an early stage organization, we took the opportunity for the feedback and are moving it forward. So a couple of the questions, and I'll need to, for some of these I can't answer on behalf of WiCyS, because the internship program is a WiCyS program that which Haystacks is a partner in. But one of the questions is, will interns, those that applied for internships, what will they know? When will people know about their status? I know that what I can't say at the moment, without going off script, is that those who were made the cuts to be able to be provided to the potential employers, that happened this week. And we expect the processes from those employers to start moving. I can envision a couple other pieces of feedback that we can provide to people in the coming days. But I have some hypotheses I want to test with Lynn and Morgan before I declare things on behalf of the organization. But do be patient. Here I will. There's been a couple of people that, again, have reiterated that they didn't get the assessment. So I will just drop a shortcut to it here in the chat. Sorry, stand by. And that way. Apologies. Just working this real time. I displayed an announcement that for anyone who did not get it, go ahead. So let's see. Other questions. What feedback? All right, so I see that someone did volunteer to help with the Spanish test. I appreciate that, and since I won't be able to get your email address from this platform, just reach out to me, and let's see. Here's my email. Appreciate you letting me know. I will be emailing. In the next couple of days, everybody will get a PDF of their results. Someone asked about whether the assessment can be, provided to high schoolers, and yes, we have done this with high schoolers. It's been used in feeder programs for cybersecurity training workshops. I do it with the University of North Georgia. So yes, please. And Lynn, if you're still on, it sounds like you could jump to answer the WiCyS question, or so if you still hear me, Lynn, go ahead and jump in. Otherwise, I did assure everyone that we will provide guidance to everyone who did apply their status shortly. This is being recorded and will be sent out. Somebody asked the question, how do you get to the chat? If you've asked that question, I think you've answered it. And I can't add more to that. So I think, so one question, there was someone, when we work with, ask how this works with potential employers, our message there really is that we help, and so the person who asked that question, follow up with me offline, because what we help with is a lot of times when you post a job on Indeed.com or whatever your sourcing method is, you're going to start to get a lot of emails, and they're going to be really hard to discern. And you're going to want a basis of how do we pick who we start interviewing? How do we pick that workflow? And a lot of our clients have implemented us in that situation, because we're able to help them figure out in a non-biased fashion. We're able to help them focus on the candidates that they should be interviewing. And again, I respect the improvements that we can make in the neurodiversity, and we're an early stage company, and if there's a team member in WiCyS that has a particular exposure to it and would like to help us prioritize a piece of the neurodiverse community, reach out, and we would love to include that. But that's the way that we do this. Is by helping HR and talent organizations figure out who are the candidates they should really focus their interviews on. As Mike said, we don't want to be the ones that are making the final decision, because there's so many things that go into what a good hire is that aren't just your cognitive reasoning, but that lets your hiring team focus on those that can be a good cognitive fit, and then ask all the other questions that go with that. I think, let me see.
Some questions pertaining to WiCyS, I could certainly do so.
Yeah, so Lynn, I think one of the questions that pertain to WiCyS is, there's some feedback that we can provide to those who applied to the internship. Feedback on those that move forward to the employer selection stage and didn't. Maybe you, Morgan, and I can come up with some feedback there in the coming days.
Oh, well, everyone's going to be receiving emails this week.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Perfect.
So those that were selected and move forward, selected to go with the internships, are going to be receiving information, and those that had the aptitude assessment and didn't make the selection process for the actual internships with those job requirements, that they will be notified as well. So all that information will be going out, so that everyone clearly knows what to expect next. And that's really the purpose of this program. Came from the initial discussion 6 months ago of, hey, sometimes we get feedback, sometimes we don't, sometimes we hear from the employer. You're going into that application loophole of application burnout, from maybe hearing back from some and not from others and everything. So here at WiCyS, we're trying to avoid that. And so as soon as we get those final employer packets into the hands of the employer partners, then notifications are going to go out to all WiCyS members that applied, and then we'll take it from there. Some great news is about the CyberGEN.IQ. We're going to be adding a tab to our Job Board Plus. So then you could also put some information about the aptitude assessment in your Job Board Plus from the WiCyS job board. So let me see here. There's so many questions that came in, so I'm just trying to go through the detailed reports, line item. Okay, can you outcomes? So everyone is going to get access to the reports from Doug's team. Everyone's going to get an email from the WiCyS team. Likely by tomorrow evening, you'll be receiving an email from WiCyS. Let me see here. We have some other questions. Oh, how many internship positions were or are available? There was roughly around 15 or 20. I don't know the exact number, but this was a piloted program. And that's why we did put the restrictions of only opening it up to our tier 1 strategic partners if they wanted to pilot with us. So we had those employer partners, Carnegie Mellon, Software Engineering Institute, Optum, we have Bloomberg and Sentinel-1. So we're super thrilled with their 4 employer partners and that we're able to pilot the program. And we did put some really, restrictions on that, where you have to be a WiCyS student member in order to be a part of the internship program. So, and that's why, in order for us to really assess on how the piloted program went, and then we're going to review all that information data, and then we're going to do an official launch at the end of the summer, preparing, and at the beginning of fall, preparing for next summer internships. Because really, a lot of our strategic partners have already had a lot of their interns for summer session already filled. So this was a piloted program, and a lot of great things came from this program. So thank you for participating in it. What percentage of the intern selection process is the all things a part of the internship selection process was considered, including your CyberGEN.IQ assessment, but we had to narrow it down also to the criteria that the employer partners put in their application. So remember, we grabbed all the applications from all our 4 employer partners, and then we put it in one application process, because the struggle that we received from our student chapter presidents was that they were going from one strategic partner internship portal to another strategic partner internship portal, and they were filling out all likely the same type of information, dumping hundreds of hours into these internship application, and really not getting any feedback from that, or any follow through or follow up from that. So we wanted to eliminate that application burnout mode, and we put together one application with all the criteria, and so we were able to parse it out and then layer on top of that your CyberGEN.IQ assessment, and then get your resume, and we put together a beautiful package for the employer partners with their top 10 selections. That's their short list, and then and it has your CyberGEN.IQ right there, and then why you got selected as part of the top 10, and then your resume, and everything is all in a beautiful package for all our employer partners. So I believe all of those are done going out today. So we're really thrilled about that. There was a lot of hard work, and it looks great.
And so the employers, there's a question, are the employers interviewing the candidates? And that's, once they come from us, it was going into their normal selection process for those positions. Likely there will be interviews, but we're not speaking on behalf of that for the organization.
Correct. Yes. So the employer is going to look at it, they're going to assess it, but you're going to have to go through their process. If they call you and move forward with you, then they're going to be taking you through their process from that point, their HR processes, whatever those are from that point.
And like I said, to all of the people that applied to the internship or the mentoring program, I'll set up just a couple of sort of sessions where I'll be on a Zoom link. I'll set a couple of times. People can drop in, ask detailed questions, and we can, because I know that we didn't get through everything, and I don't want to pay short shrift to any of the questions, because this was such great feedback. So I'll schedule those kind of like a Zoom based Ask Me Anything we can dig into. But so I don't want anyone to think that if a question didn't get answered here, that it's being ignored.
Got it.
And also, how many open positions are there for the internships? I think in total, we had 9 or 10 positions.
I thought we had more than that.
There was something on there where it was like 5 from Sentinel-1, 4 from Optum. It was, so yeah, it might have been 12 or 13, but it was on that order of magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of the positions required people being US based.
Right.
And the graduate, if you graduate before 2023, I don't think, that would be an employer focus limitation. If their internships focus only on people that are undergrads, then that's an employer-based question. From our point of view, for the WiCyS process point of view, that wasn't the gating criteria.
I think we got them all. Is there an opportunity to retake the assessment in the future? Well, the assessment is going to be baked into our mentor-mentee program and our internship program moving forward. Doug, if they've already taken it once and we open up the applications again in this late summer, early fall, and that folks wanted to get reassessed, is that opportunity available to them?
So right now we're implementing. So as I said, we're an early stage company. So we're not like the SAT where you can sit for 2 consecutive days and take a completely different assessment. We're implementing secondary versions of the questions so that people could take it multiple times. But those questions have to be tested before they can be rolled out to make sure there's no statistical difference. So right now, if somebody wanted to take it again tomorrow, the answer would be no. But we are working on getting people the ability to retake it as soon as possible. Someone asked the question, can they rescind their results from the data? And I'm not sure what that person means. It might mean they want their email address removed from the database, and if that's the case, I mean, yes. But if there's more specific information, if that means something different, of course, I would have to know who that person is to be able to do that. So you'd have to reach out to me.
Yeah,
and yes, you do send me an email. I'll put my email address back up on the screen. And I also, someone said that the link to the survey URL wasn't visible, and apologies for that. It went in the announcement, but again, reach out to me via email if you'd like it. And everyone that did take the assessment, they'll get a PDF of their results emailed to them.
great. Well, I think that's a wrap. It's the top of the hour, and we had a lot of great questions. I'll make sure that Doug's team receives all these questions, so we have them all, and we're able to source them out and receive additional information. If you're emailing Doug, he will be responding to you directly. If you have any questions about the WiCyS side of it, email info@wicys.org. And that's wrap. You all are wonderful WiCyS community members. Thank you for being a part of our organization. We're so happy to be able to continually improve ourselves and the offerings that we have, and to be able to launch new programs and to be able to add on to existing programs. And this is how all good things happen, is from great conversations, great partnerships, listening and learning from what the needs are within the community and what the needs are within industry, and bridging that gap, making great things happen, because we're all here. We care about the cybersecurity workforce shortage. We care about our careers, and we care about making a difference in the world. So I appreciate your time and attention. And Doug, Michael, wonderful seeing the both of you again. Always great. And I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at WiCyS 2022. That's March 17th through the 19th. They'll be here in a heartbeat. So we're certainly busy with it. It's lots of fun.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.